Hello, committee members. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for
Hi,
having me. How's everything?
we're back together.
Yes, we are.
That's nice. We'll do a brief round of introductions. And Margaret, if you could help me to take note of the attendees, that would be great. And Derek, I know you always are so great at helping us with minutes as well, but this meeting will be recorded, right? According to our bylaws. So we'll have that for reference as well. Welcome everyone to the full committee, the CDBG Mitigation Citizen Advisory Committee. Again, I'm Katja Woke. I'm with the Hart Research Institute for Gulf of Mexico Studies. We're in Corpus Christi. We're at Texas A&M Corpus Christi. And we'll just do a brief round of introductions. We've all been together in one way or another, but there may be some folks that are new to each other here. So just your name and your institution or organization or who you're representing, and anything about yourself you'd like to share. Of course, I'm joined by my wonderful co-chair, Amanda. So Amanda, please, if you'd introduce yourself.
Sure. Hey there, guys. Amanda Fenwick. As Katja said, I co-chair this great group of citizens. I live in Clear Lake Shores, small town in northern part of Galveston County. And I think when this whole process began, I was still on city council then. I served on city council there for 8.5 years. But now I'm just a citizen, but I'm just happy to be here and working through this process.
Thanks, Amanda. And I'm going to go in no particular order for introductions. I'm just going to do how my screen is organized. And Keith, I think because you were talking, I have you up next. So please introduce yourself.
My name is Keith Downey and glad to see everybody. I am the Super Neighborhood President for Cashmere Garden here in Houston and also a founding director of Northeast Houston Redevelopment Council. Glad to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Next, I have Tracy Stevens, please.
Hello, this is Tracy Stevens. I'm the president of Sunnyside Civic Club. I'm also chairman of South Park Super Neighborhood for infrastructure, rehab, and development. And I'm also a member of Pleasantville Super Neighborhood 57 and the organization ACT, which is also located in the Pleasantville community. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us today. Next on my screen, I have, well, actually, Sylvia, why don't you go next? I have you up.
Okay. Hey, everyone. I'm Sylvia Jones. I'm with the Texas General Land Office, and I serve as administrative portion to this outfit along with Margaret.
Well, and since she introduced Margaret, please, why don't you go ahead?
Hi, my name is Margaret Adams. I am the new GLO CDR liaison. I will interface with other agencies and organizations that are active after a disaster or involved in disaster recovery planning.
Thanks for joining us today. And Jet, I'm going to save you for last. So let's go on to Sandra Edwards then.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sandra Edwards. I am a resident of Fifth Ward. I am Miss Impact, Impact Fifth Ward, and I am an ambassador, a climate ambassador. I am an air ambassador as well. And thank you for having me.
Well, we're delighted you can join us today. Next, I have Kathy, please.
I am Kathy Holcomb with the City of Deer Park. I'm Public Works Operations Manager.
Thanks for joining us. Next, I believe I have Commissioner Payne.
Good morning or good afternoon. I'm Donald Dude Payne. I've been county commissioner here in Missouri County for Precinct 1 for 22 years. So I've been through quite a few unfortunate events like Ike and Nicholas last year, and Harvey and all those.
Well, thank you for joining us and making time for the meeting today. Next up, I have I'm losing track a little because folks are jumping a little bit around. Brad, have you introduced yourself yet? I don't think so.
I'm Brad Stafford. I'm the former city manager in Navasota where this all started. Now I work for Blau Engineering in Bryan, but I still represent the interest of municipalities.
Excellent, Brad. And you've given us such wonderful input along the way. So thanks for joining us. Derek, please.
Hello, everybody. I'm the trustee secretary for the Citizens Advisory Committee 2. I used to work down here in the Lower Rio Valley COG, and I recently changed over. So I'm representing a private citizen now for the county of Hidalgo. I'm doing it on volunteer time.
And thanks for all the hard work that you put in for us, Derek. And with that, our other co-committee secretary, Shelley, are you here?
Hi, I am here. And yes, Derek, thank you so much. Derek has been the strength in the secretarial pool here, and I do appreciate that. And I do apologize. I am Shelley Stewart. I am president and CEO of the Portland Chamber of Commerce, and I do represent San Patricio County. I do, however, live in Aransas County, so I have extensive experience, unfortunately, with a direct hit on my own home, and I also worked at that chamber during Hurricane Harvey, the Rockport Fulton Chamber. So that's the experience I'm bringing, and I'm very grateful for this group and all your dedication. Thank you very much.
Well, and it's been a team effort, Shelley,
Yes.
including with your great guidance. So thank you for everything. And then next I have Mr. Lee Coggins.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lee Coggins. I'm a citizen of Friendswood, Texas, which is located between Houston and Galveston. That city was affected by Harvey as well as my house, so that's why I'm here.
Well, thank you for joining us. Y'all bring very on the ground experience with which I'm sorry we had to go through this, but we definitely need your perspectives. And then I have John Muir. John Muir, are you able to unmute? Okay, we may be having some technical difficulty there. And then Judge McDonald, thank you for joining us today.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry I'm late.
Not at all. We're just doing very brief introductions.
Okay.
So please, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, okay, sure thing. My name's Nate McDonald. I'm the county judge for Matagorda County for the last 16 years.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today.
Yes, ma'am.
And I believe, and John Muir, I don't know if you're able to unmute, but let us know, or you can chat at us if you're having, use a chat function. If you're having any technical difficulty, we'll try and monitor that. And then I believe I've got all of the committee members. So last but not least, Jet, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, Jet Hayes. I'm one of the deputy directors at the General Land Office, and I'm actually just here to kind of lurk and maybe learn a bit from y'all and not really participate so much. But I work with Margaret and Sylvia, and they fill me in on what's going on, but sometimes first person's a little bit better.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining. Have I missed anybody? Okay. So y'all saw the agenda. We've got some things to discuss, so we ought to jump right in. Can you see the agenda? Am I frozen? Oh gosh.
Your screen, it just says you started screen sharing, but we can't actually see it yet.
Oh gosh. I love technology. Well, let me just start talking while we wait for this bug to work itself out. We're joined here today by Margaret Adams from the General Land Office, who of course introduced herself, and y'all know that we've had a little bit of turnover when it comes to GLO experts and staff we've been able to work with. We've had a couple of representatives, and Margaret is I think this is your first committee meeting, Margaret, is that true?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, excellent. Well, we're really happy to have you here. I've worked with Margaret Adams on a number of recovery and resilience building issues, and she brings a really great perspective. And we've already talked with Margaret, Amanda, Shelley, and Derek, and myself a lot about how we can start to move forward in a more iterative fashion, right? Get that rhythm down a little bit, because we've admittedly been a little bit of like fits and starts. We got some momentum, and then it took a while to get that going again. So we'd really like to get that rhythm down of meeting and getting some work done, getting our perspectives to the GLO, because that's what we're really here for, right? And so I'm really excited Margaret is joining us to help us do that, of course, with Sylvia and the team. I've invited her to just give us any updates or guidance or perspectives from GLO that we ought to consider. So Margaret, please.
Sure, yeah. So the first thing I want to do is give you guys an update on what's happening with our mitigation fund. We've unveiled some of the programs and they've started to roll out. And so the first thing I want to tell you about is the regional mitigation program that's known as a COG mod. When HUD gave us funding, they said, you can get rid of it. You can use it one of two ways. You can either implement programs yourself, like the housing programs, or you can use a method of distribution and allow input at the local level to distribute the funding. And so that's what GLO did. And so using the councils of government that were impacted by Hurricane Harvey, we asked the 9 councils to come up with an objective, verifiable methodology for the distribution of funds. That program is about $1.1 billion. And of that, we have 4 of the mods that have been approved by the GLO and have started to roll out to the eligible communities. The first one is Central Texas COG, which had 2 eligible counties, and they had a total of $6.769 million. Next, which was HGAC, in which the entirety of the COG was impacted. HGAC received a total of $488,762,000. Debt COG, which had most of it, I think 9 of the 11 counties were eligible. Their total allocation was $161,542,000. And Southeast Texas Regional Planning Committee, all of those counties were eligible. They had $142,878,000. And so for each of these mods, when I say it's been approved, what I mean is the Council of Government created a method of distribution, which was informed by a public planning session. So first they had to create a citizen participation plan and tell us how they were going to notify citizens and when they were going to post their notices that this was being undertaken. And then they had a planning meeting where they were supposed to solicit public input on the factors that would be used for the method of distribution. They submitted to us their preliminary mod. We reviewed it for data clarity, making sure that, you know, if they said they used American Census data from 2019, that in fact that was the data that was used. And then we checked to make sure that they did their notifications appropriately. And then we did a tentative approval. Once the COG received a tentative approval from the GLO, then they held their public hearing where they said, hey, here's the plan we're going forward with. Let us know if you have any issues with it. They had to have it open for a minimum of 15 days for public comment. And then once that public comment period was concluded, they submitted to us the mod. They made notice to us of any comments that were received, and they were required to provide responses to those comments. They provided us with the allocation worksheet, which gave us the breakdown of which communities were included and which were excluded and why. And then we checked the math again. We made sure that the responses were appropriate. And then we said, okay, you're ready to proceed. And so for those 4 COGs, what happens next is that the identified communities that are eligible to receive funds will be part of what we're calling a roadshow. And so our teams are going down to, like, for example, they're going to Southeast Texas Regional Planning Commission tomorrow. And they're going to go down, they're going to say, hey, look, you're eligible for funding. This is how the application process is going to go. Here are some things you need to consider in terms of environmental reviews and best practices for procurement. And then we'll begin helping the communities submit their applications. So the first program that is out, that's the COGMOD. We have two programs that are open right now. One is called the Resilient Community Program, and one is called the Local Hazard Mitigation Program. Local Hazard Mitigation Planning Program. Resilient Communities Program is it's a planning program. And so what we say is you can apply for, I think it's up to $300,000 to implement, adopt, and modify your land use codes, your building codes, your floodplain ordinances, your comprehensive planning, and community rating system activities. And community rating system is related to the National Flood Insurance Program. It's an education component. And so any community that is interested in updating those codes can come to us for the funds, and then they can go and they can do it themselves, or they can hire a vendor to assist them in adopting and implementing those updates. The Local Hazard Mitigation Program is a program through which a community or a county could apply to update or modify, update or modify their hazard mitigation plan. For those of you who are unaware, FEMA now has a requirement that if you're going to receive the hazard mitigation grant program funding that is open after a disaster, you first have to have an approved active mitigation plan for your area. And so this is an opportunity for those communities or counties that don't have one, like if their plan is expired, or if they decide that they want to update it to reflect more current hazards, they can come to us, we will give them funding, and then they can do those updates. We also have a geographic information hub that is open now. That's not really a program, but I want to let you know because I think it's an important step towards providing communities with the tools that they need for recovery. The GIS hub has several viewers. The first viewer is our environmental review mapping application program. We call it IRMA. You can go to your community, you can zoom into your community, and it will show you things like where your critical habitats are, where your floodplains are. So we have the FEMA firm maps have been uploaded to it. Shows you brownfields, dry cleaning sites, petroleum tanks, anything that's going to be of an environmental concern for project development or for environmental justice purposes. You can go in there and you can turn on the different layers, and you can see in your community where those hazards are to either mitigate them or to advise you if you were looking, let's say you're pretending you're going to put in a detention drainage. Yes, thank you, Jet. One other thing I forgot to mention about the Resilient Communities Plan, I'm sorry, is that the CRS activities, these education activities, will focus on low and moderate income populations. So let's say that you're going to put in a drainage ditch and you think you're going to put it from Smith Street to Vale Street. Well, you go and you look on the IRMA application, the IRMA mapping application, and you realize that right smack dab in the middle of that is a brownfield. Well, you're going to have to remediate that. So maybe you need to either adjust your budget, adjust your timeline, or adjust your project. And so it gives just communities another tool for understanding sort of what their environment looks like, which is useful for folks who are new to the area or new to the industry. The other viewer that we have is more demographic related. However, this is also important. So as we talk about the COGMA program, for example, let's say a community wants to do a project, but they're looking for a low and moderate income benefit. And so they need, but they don't know where those folks live. We'll pretend. They can go to this website, they can zoom into their community, and they can turn on demographic layers. This information has been pulled from US Census Bureau. Yes, ma'am, I will. Yes, sir, I will. We will take the demographic data and we've uploaded it so that you can put the layer down and see that, oh, a project here will benefit a significant number of low and moderate income people, or a demographic of minorities that have been underserved, and so on and so forth. And so these are things that have developed recently, have just recently been opened up to the public. So I wanted to bring your attention to those as well. Finally, although it's not mitigation specific, it is a program that we went enrolled recently, is the 2018 disaster areas and 2019 disaster areas have competitions open for infrastructure applications. The 2018 competition has a total of $19,690,000. And we have 22 applications that were received for that program. The 2019 competition is $61,430,000, and that had 56 applications that were received. Those applications have been scored and are now undergoing eligibility review. We should be able to, we've got some requests for information that we need to follow up on for some of those applications that scored high and appear to be eligible. And once we get that in, then we'll be able to release the names of the communities whose applications were approved through these programs. Those are my big updates for our programs. Before I go any further, I see Mr. Stevens asked me to post the links, and yes, sir, I will get those for you in just a second, but I wanted to see if anybody had any questions about the things that I've just mentioned. Okay, if you think of something later, please feel free to put it in the chat and I'll answer you. As far as updates go about the Citizen Advisory Committee itself, our leadership did have an opportunity to review the work plan that was submitted, and I worked with Katya and Amanda and Derek to provide some of my updates to the proposed work plan. So those have been incorporated already, Katya, and so I think that pending any questions, that's my report.
Thank you for the very thorough report, Margaret. And yeah, the data viewers in particular are so valuable. And while you were talking, we'll make sure to share those as links, and then we'll follow up in email as well. And while you're talking, you know, I want everybody to think as well about what kind of data do you need to tell the story of your local community, because that's one of the things that we can also discuss in this committee is advising GLO on the implementation of their program, but also thinking about what the needs are of our local communities. And Sandra, I see you have a hand up, please.
I'm a little bit confused. I'm not even sure. Why am I in this meeting? I'm confused. I don't know. Because I was in the GLO program and they threw me out the program for no reason. I still living in a half-built house, as y'all can see, confined to one room. So when I was asked to come to this meeting, I was thinking that it was about to find out what was going on with the program. What is this program about? Why am I in this meeting? Because I'm confused. I mean, they threw me out. They were supposed to do my house. I was approved. And Ms. Jenner made a decision to throw me out over email. I feel I was treated very royally wrong. And I still haven't gotten a letter saying I'm out the program. I still haven't gotten no feedback. Still haven't got nobody to talk to me. And I'm still over here in this house with mold in it. So I'm confused. The program ain't working for me. So why am I in this meeting? I mean, why was I invited to this meeting? I'm confused. I am very confused.
Sandra, I'd like to work with you on that very question. I'm not exactly sure. I'm chairing this committee of citizens to understand why GLO's programs work or why they don't work. And we're supposed to give GLO advice on like, hey, this isn't working and here's why. And here's what we recommend. Here's how we recommend you fix it. But as far as like your invitation to the committee, GLO would have to speak to that. But maybe we ought to follow up with you individually after this meeting to talk a little bit further about this.
Okay, can somebody, because I haven't had a feedback yet, and Miss Jenna has a nasty attitude, so she didn't explain nothing to me. She just opted me out and told me it was her decision, and I knew that was wrong, but hey, who could I tell anything to? So I want some closure. This is what I'm telling you. I need some closure because the way she did it was very unprofessional, and I haven't heard any more yet from GLO. And I have a lot of, I could tell them about how unprofessional they are, but we're not going to get on that. But I would like somebody to please follow up with me.
So Amanda is my co-chair, and let's definitely make sure that we reach out to you with GLO. And
get Jenna on that too. I'm on Miss Jenna to be a part of this because I need to. She the one that we need to get straight with her professional. because
Yes,
she's not
ma'am.
professional at all.
Well, how about I have your email address, so may I reach out to you with my co-chair and with GLO following this meeting?
Please do. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm gonna get out this meeting because y'all talking a lot of business. I want y'all to go on with y'all business because I'm confused in here and I don't think I need to be in this right
I
now.
understand. Thank you for joining us. All right. We'll
Okay, y'all
follow
have
up
a
with you.
blessed day. Okay,
Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, well, we'll make sure to follow up with Ms. Edwards afterwards. And then we have a question from Keith in the chat. Could you touch on the Amendment 11 Hurricane Harvey State Action Plan for public comment and touch on the new amendments as well?
Yes, so Amendment 11 for Hurricane Harvey, just as a brief reminder that each allocation from HUD has its own action plan. So Amendment 11 is very specific to the Community Development Block Grant for disaster, CDBG-DR funding for disaster recovery related to Hurricane Harvey. Amendment 11 moves $1.2 billion from the City of Houston's Homeowner Assistance Program back to the GLO for administration to continue the Homeowner Assistance Program, but under our purview instead of being administered by the City of Houston. And so that is the crux of the amendment.
And it's due, I just saw that email come through, like the public comments are due the first part of November. Is that right, Margaret?
Yes, ma'am. Comments are due by 5 p.m. on November the 7th, and they can be submitted by email. And I'll put that email address in the chat. And I think, and I'll have to double check, but I believe that is our biggest and most recent amendment. Mr. Stevens, if there was one specific that you were looking for, let me know.
Yes, those projects that were previously submitted by the City of Houston for storm-related upgrades and mitigation, all of those same projects are going to have to be resubmitted back by the city. And how does these amendments change that, since the majority of the money that I'm looking at, everything was reduced?
So, okay, for the mitigation fund, if you're talking about the CDBG mitigation, and apologies that if this is not clear, because I think I might not be clear, but the CDBG mitigation fund, none of those funds were given to the City of Houston. Amendment 1 for CDBG mitigation gave $750 million to the County of Harris. Now, if you're talking about funding for the CDBG-DR Hurricane Harvey, those projects are probably, that's not Amendment 11, that's probably Amendment 10, and I can look that up and get that information for you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any further questions? And like I said, Margaret's going to be working with us pretty closely. So if questions come up later, we'll make sure you have her contact information and we can be in more iterative communication with her. But are there any further questions or points for her to consider now? Yes, Keith.
One of the things that we're finding, especially in minority communities, people that were in the City of Houston program that have been switched back over to GLO, the situation, I know different criteria, different requirements, the whole bit, but what's happening is the longer we go over time, the more likely people are going to lose paperwork. That happens, that's reality of life. The other thing is that we also are finding that they are in a point of picking the contractor, the colors, the tile, the this, the that, and then they're finding out that they're denied by GLO. And I have seniors in various communities and residents that are reaching out saying, I'm frustrated because I thought I was there. And now I'm finding problems that I'm not eligible now, I'm kicked out. So I think that may have been part of Sandra's frustration or what have you, I'm not sure. But I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that. And I acknowledge that there is frustration for those citizens that had their application, they might have been next in line, they might have been halfway through the process, and then the last minute things get shuffled around and they're back to square one. I can only imagine how frustrating that is. And so I want you to know that even though the process is onerous, the folks here at GLO are aware, and we do try not to do those things. Unfortunately, it does happen. And Mr. Downey, if you have specific locations that or homeowners that you know are having those issues, I'd be interested to know and to see what we can do to help them. It might not be anything other than to listen to them and say, I hear you and I understand, and we will do our best to do better. But you know, at least they have someone that they a face-to-face connection, someone that they can speak to and that they know that their story has been heard.
I'll get you that information. A couple.
Yes,
of
sir.
residents.
Thank you.
I know one in Sunnyside and one in Cashmere.
Okay.
Anyone else considerations for Margaret and for Jet and Sylvia? We appreciate you bringing these stories to the committee, because this is what we're all about, right? I mean, ultimately, these are programs that impact people on the ground, and so we need to know what's happening.
Well, and I think it's a good segue, Katja, into the next agenda item, which is our work plan, because one of the big things that we've been talking about is that communication back to the citizens about all these things and more that we've been talking about. So, yes.
Absolutely. That's a great point, Amanda. So let's get on to it, the work plan. Who wants to share the overview? You want me to do it? Anyone want to? We've all been working on this. It's been a team effort.
You're on a roll. Go for it.
Okay. I don't want to. Y'all are going to get tired of my voice. We attached this to your meeting invite and we sent it out a few months ago for comments. And like I said, we'd like to get into a rhythm of working with each other and getting some concrete guidance to GLO on how we can fix some of these issues that we're seeing, that we're hearing. And so this is our proposal for how we move forward, is that we split into working groups. We started with these two committees, we came together, and now we're looking to you to see where your interest is, where your expertise lies, and how you'd like to help us move over. To be abundantly clear on what we're asking for, we created on the left-hand side, and I assume everyone can see this document right now that I'm referring to. Okay. We created it on the left-hand side committee terms, which were not in our bylaws. Our bylaws just talk about how long you can serve for the chairs, but they don't really go into much further detail. So our thinking was that the co-chairs would remain for a couple more years, and that the working groups would break out and they would have about 2 years to complete their final guidance to GLO, final set of recommendations on the issue areas noted. So about 2 years to complete a deliverable. And we were thinking that about 2/3 of the committee then would rotate off, and we would ask 1/3 of you to stay on so that we could have some continuity as we get new members to join. Okay. And we sent y'all a survey on who you are, who you represent, and would you be willing to continue to serve? And so thank you for your responses on that. So that's the ask, right? And then at least one committee member may be asked to be the co-chair once Amanda and I rotate off. Okay. Any comments on that general approach?
So we can't put it in there that you and Amanda cannot rotate off? Well, I tried, guys. I'm sorry.
Nice try, Shelley.
Y'all are gonna get sick of us. So
We're trying to set a good, framework for those who follow us next.
That's right. That's right. Any other comments on that general proposition? Okay. So and again, these are not our ideas. We talked about this at our last meeting, right? That one big area that needs to be addressed is communication. And there's a lot of nuance inside that, but how we engage with communities, how we identify community leaders and work with them, and how we communicate between GLO and communities. So that's working group 1. And then maybe the outcome of the output of that, like what they would be working on, is some sort of plan or guidance on how to communicate with GLO, between GLO and communities, how GLO ought to be engaging communities, etc. But that's very, that's adaptable. Whatever that working group wants to deliver is up to them. And then working group 2 would be focused more on that application guidance. We've heard a lot of issues on questions with individuals, communities in the applications. And Derek really helped us to lead and craft this idea that GLO has their own frequently asked questions, these facts, but they don't always speak. They don't always speak in the language of the community. They don't always address the specific questions that our community members have. Derek, is that more or less the thinking there?
Yes, definitely. I think one of the inputs from that working group 2 would be the disaggregated data from some of the application processes that have gone on in the past, to kind of take those under a microscope and determine where those recurring issues may arise with applications.
Right. To try and head some of those issues off, right? Exactly. And so that would be like a community-based, individual-based perspective on frequently asked questions from this end user's perspective. We see a need across these 2 working groups to think about the data component to each of these. And are there data that exist that could be better applied in these issue areas? Are there data we need to be collecting? How can we better tell our own success story, right? In offering these recommendations to GLO. What is the impact of our work? What is the impact of GLO's work? All of that. So we're asking, maybe some folks would like to be part of a working group, but also help us to think about this data piece. I know I'm certainly interested in that. So we're going to be asking you to join one of these working groups, but before, and we'll do it more formally through a follow-up email. But if you want to chat, like where your interest lies, that's great too, or talk to us right now. But before we do that, do we have any questions about what we're presenting here, or any comments on have we gotten it wrong?
I don't think so. I think this is good. I would be interested in especially the citizen communication channels. I think that that's something that we can definitely improve upon. And so the application guidance is important, and obviously I will participate wherever the committee thinks it's best for me personally to be on, but my personal wheelhouse is community engagement. So I think that is really important.
Well, and there's crossover across them as well, but thank you, Margaret, for that. Any committee members? Okay. Well, then these will be our working groups. Of course, Margaret and I and Amanda and I discussed that working groups need leaders to effectively get things done. And whether that's a mixture of me, Amanda, and Margaret, and and Shelley and Derek, or other members would like to step forward, we would welcome that leadership. Absolutely. But following this meeting, we'll at least send an email out asking which working group you'd like to be a part of. And we'll figure out the leadership component from there. And then the working groups will break off and have their individual meetings. And then we'll plan to come back together as a full committee, probably in the spring. And Keith is saying he likes working group 1. That's great. If anyone else wants to chat right now where their interest lies, we'd welcome that.
Mr. Stevens says he's interested in the community in working group 1.
And also you may work on both too, if anyone's ambitious. Any comments finally before we turn to the last agenda item? All right. Well, this just shows that we've done our homework. Because this is not a surprise to anyone. We've been talking about these 2 areas, and I'm glad you appreciate. So the cross-cutting act. Yeah, so the cross-cutting is, let me share it one more time. The cross-cutting activity, Mr. Coggins, is trying to understand the impact of our work, the impact of GLO programs. And so it's a data collection effort to think about how, for example, in working group 1, and Amanda, maybe you have some thinking here too, because you were thinking about like a database, but in working group 1, how are we reaching out to community leaders? Who are the community leaders? What does that decision kind of tree look like? How many organizations are we reaching? What types of organizations are they? Where are they, right? Maybe there's some data gathering around that. Or what types of messaging are effective, or there's a lot of different angles you could take there.
So would each working group have this component? Is that why it's kind of on the bottom?
I think, I mean, what our
think so.
thinking was that there would be 1 or 2 people more if they had the interest that would attend both committees or both working groups and help think about, or maybe it's like 1 person in working group 1 and 1 person in working group 2, and they meet together periodically to think about the data that would be useful to their working group. And then does GLO have that data? Do the communities have that data? Do we need to collect it? Does it already exist? What type of impact could it have would be the question. Is there common data that could be useful, or information that could be useful to working group 2 and working group 1? So it's kind of thinking all of that through. Have I gotten that right, Amanda?
Yeah, you nailed it, Katja. It was just basically as we're talking about these 2 different working groups, we think that there's going to be this information that we're going to have to house somewhere, or that we're going to need at some point in time. And so how is it that we collect that and store it so that we have it for the future? And like Katja said, it might already be something that exists from the GLO. It might be something that we need to, to develop, but just kind of thinking ahead with all these groups and different things that we're going to be working with. How do we collect that into one place that makes sense for the future, for now and for the future?
Okay, thanks. So it's like a component for each working group to think about.
I think so. And maybe there's a way to more consistently collect user story information as well, like Miss Edwards and the story she was giving to us. That's qualitative, right? It's not information you can count, but it's useful information. So is there a way to collect these user stories in a more standardized way, methodological way, that we could better capture, like, what is the impact? What is the issue? What is the impact of doing this better? There's an information component there that I think we could help with. We've got some chats, so I'm just making sure.
I think is interesting. I just heard on a webinar that there's not a lot of outcome-based research on just generally programs, including like buyouts, which we're not doing, but good. I think that this cross-cutting activity is relevant to inform future, not just Texas activities, but other states' activities on what outcomes could look like, or best practices to follow, or places where there exists great opportunity to improve.
I agree. And we've also talked about in the past that sometimes, the buck doesn't necessarily stop with GLO, but with HUD, and we can't necessarily change HUD requirements, but maybe we can gather data that demonstrates why these requirements need to change. I don't have any specific example right now, but it's been a topic of discussion in the past. So the thinking is at least one person from working group 1 and one person from working group 2 would be tasked with this, thinking through the data component, and they could rely on each other to talk this through and talk with their working groups and with GLO to think about this data and information component. Okay, any other questions? Okay, so then, like I said, we'll send out an email asking you to select the working group you would like to contribute toward. And each of those working groups, will be asking them to come up with a very easy brief, but like a timeline of what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. Because we're all about effecting change, and like I said, we want to get that rhythm down. Mr. Stevens.
It's not really it's a question, but then again, it may not be. But some of the problems that I've noticed here in Houston, Harris County is that they're having a lot of pushback with communities that have deed restrictions and HOAs when the GLO will only build a certain type of house, but the deed restriction for that community where the home would be built is not allowing that. So what is happening, or what is going to happen, or how are they going to address trying to build a certain type of homes that they're offering when communities' deed restrictions don't allow them, but they've been accepted into the program?
You raise a very good point, Mr. Stevens. And we only have a few minutes left, but so I don't want to go too deep into it. This, I think what you brought up is an excellent point for working group 1 and for working group 2, right? Because we're talking about individual applicants are applying for these programs, and then after they've been accepted, then they find out that there's X, Y, and Z issues, which are, they're kind of GLO, but they're also kind of community level too. And so, this is something that we need to tease out, and it's an ongoing conversation between the state and the local community, and the local community and the homeowner, because we'll have to work together for this resilient recovery. And if there are challenges either that we bring to the table or that are there at the table already, is less relevant than, okay, how do we figure this out? But the short answer to your question, well, not so short, but is that we have certain requirements that we have to build houses to, like, the standard of we're building to 2 foot above base flood elevation to prevent that house from flooding again. And in those instances, those are where the deed restrictions that you're talking about come into play, because they might specifically prohibit houses that are different than the neighborhood. I don't know how we do that off the top of my head, but it's something that I'm certainly interested in exploring.
Bring up, and I'm
Yeah.
sorry,
No,
you
keep
bring up
going.
on that point. I just want to add what I've been noticing driving around Houston. Homes that are with that Chapter 19 have been raised. A lot of pipes are exposed under those houses. Come a hard freeze winter with PVC piping and all. Won't you have a freeze in your pipes going into the home? And I think it should be a requirement to close off that opening around the house on all four sides, not including the steps, of course. But I think that it's very clear you now have channels that you're channeling air, cold air underneath those houses. And I don't know if anybody ever took that into the engineering of all of this.
You know, Mr. Downey, having not seen them myself, I certainly believe that what you're seeing is true. And there are things that could be done. So for example, part of the reason you elevate it, as I mentioned, is to reduce the amount of flooding that could potentially hit the house, right? And before 2021, would anybody here on this committee have said, oh, freezing air, that is definitely a problem, right? You know, you raise a good point, and it's something that we may not have thought about because it wasn't a major hazard. There are things that could be done, and I certainly think for working group 2, that's an excellent question to explore, because they have things like they're like basically tearaway walls, and so you put the wall up, but in the event of a flooding, instead of taking down the whole house, the wall just rips off and it saves the rest of the structure. You know, I don't know what that would do for preventing the freeze of a pipe, because, you know, again, 2021 was just a whole different ball game in terms of weather, but you know, this is certainly something that could be explored by working group 2.
Mr. Downey, those pipes, are they large diameter, white or beige colored pipe?
I say they're 4-inch diameter, 4-inch diameter.
Yeah, that's
on
sewer
pipes.
That'll be a sewer pipe. We use generally PEX, which is a flexible pipe that can freeze and expand for the fresh water coming into the house.
Gotcha.
Yeah, generally there'll be some PVC feeding in there. That's usually like a 1-inch or 1.5, but
That's helpful, Jet.
Jet ran our housing program.
but if you get a picture of it, I'll be happy to confirm that though. Absolutely.
All right, will do.
And you know, it made me think we ought to go through the minutes of past meetings, Margaret and Amanda. Derek's done a really good job at putting those together, and we ought to go through them because there's been a lot of little insights like this that maybe there is a clear answer, or maybe this is something that the working groups should be working on. And there's been a lot of input from committee members to date. So we ought to go through those past meeting minutes and make sure that we're tracking those.
That's a good idea.
Mm-hmm. They bring a wealth of perspective, our members. And we are closing in on time. What I will do is I have y'all know me, right? I've got a PowerPoint. So I'll be sure to send it to you, but we did a brief survey to ask. The final agenda item is we have some vacancies on the committee and we need to fill them. So we did a brief survey asking, where are you from? Who do you represent? And what geographic region do you represent? And then what kind of stakeholder group do you represent, right? And we have those results, and then whether or not folks are willing to continue serving, which I love that response right there. Yes, thank you, committee members. This got me really excited. So I'll send these results out. The final point is, how do we best fill those vacancies? And I think given the input from our committee members on who they are, who they say they represent, Amanda, Margaret, and I can think a little bit about some ideas for filling those gaps. But if you have recommendations, we want to hear from you. Absolutely.
Katja, I'd like to ask that specifically Mr. Downey, Mr. Stevens, yeah, you guys, and Mr. Stafford, I think, for those of you who are residents, if there are other residents that represent similar interests of yours, although from a different neighborhood or a different part of town, we would strongly love to receive those recommendations from you. Something that I'd like to float, if we don't get enough recommendations from committee members, is that we consider adding an advocacy group. For example, we could add Tex Appleseed, which does disaster recovery for low-income survivors. We could look at Rio Grande Legal Aid, which sometimes look at the legal issues that relate to disaster recovery. An NAACP chapter, a LULAC chapter, a Texas Disability Rights. I feel like, you know, we have a lot of really good voices here to highlight the issues at the individual level, but systemic issues which might be invisible to those of us so close to the ground, are more apparent to those organizations that study the systems of disaster recovery. And so if the committee were interested and willing, I could create a list and vet it with my folks and then present it to the committee at a future date. Although I'd hope to have those positions filled sooner rather than
Yeah,
later.
right. We do need to fill those vacancies. So why don't we send out the list of who's on, and thank you, Shelley. I see your suggestions coming through as well. Why don't we send a list of like who we have and some suggestions over email? And if we need to pull together, you know, a group that's interested in talking about this quickly, we can, or we can take suggestions by email.
And then the other thing I'd like to suggest, if it works well for the group, could we think about setting a standard cadence? For example, could we meet regularly in February and, I don't know, whatever the equivalent, August, February and August, March and September. And, you know, the dates in those months could change, but at least you know every February, every August, we would be meeting. So as a suggestion to the group for consideration.
I would appreciate that. I need this on my calendar.
Yes, please.
Difficult to keep up. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna have just a couple more surveys here on what working group you'd like to join, and then scheduling if you have any preferences for months. And then finally, a question about, do you have any recommendations on vacancies for on filling those vacancies of committee members? Okay, any final questions or thoughts?
Thank you so much for letting me crash your committee. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited in hearing your input and trying to make this organization more responsive, because I know that everybody who works here really cares about what we do, and we know it's frustrating. So we want to do what we can to make the process just a little bit easier.
Thank you, Margaret.
And Katya, Amanda, I want to put a note in the chat that if you guys are okay, I'll go ahead and send the committee members the application. It's a PDF, it's fillable PDF, and they can distribute it to those people that they think would be good potential committee members, so that we can go ahead and review the application so we can start filling these spots before we lose more people.
Do we need a deadline for that, Sylvia, Katya, Amanda?
Why don't we talk offline about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest
Thank you
of your
guys.
day.
You all.
Be in touch
Bye-bye.
soon. Bye.
Be safe.
Yes, sir. You
Yes,
too.
you as well.